For the 4runner specifically, which is why a lot of viewers tune in to Fixity Fix, we thought it would be helpful for you to see our process of picking the ideal battery for this car.
Fixity Fix!
If you're a true 4runner aficionado, make sure to watch this video all the way to the end to learn how this car fooled me, and a kind viewer named Mike Rogers helped me learn something about 4runners that I didn't know. So in this case, we chose an AGM, or absorbed glass matte battery, for this 4runner. It's a relatively new technology compared to standard lead acid batteries, and it has better durability and also better power, and will also hold a charge longer under certain circumstances. We picked up this Interstate MTZ AGM battery because it has pure lead plates, which is far better chemistry than what you typically find in batteries these days. It also has a 4-year free replacement warranty, and I've had good luck with Interstate brands in the past. I haven't had very good luck with Optima batteries. I've only had 1 out of 5 of them last until the end of the warranty period in various cars I've serviced with them. This battery is spendy. It is $420 right now from Interstate dealers. We ended up getting this from Amazon at about $20 less, so we just ordered it there. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to consider one yourself. AGM batteries are wonderful for cars that are equipped from the factory to run an AGM battery. However, a car like the 4runner that's equipped for just a standard lead acid battery is not the ideal candidate. Parts stores and manufacturers of AGM batteries will often try to upsell you anyway. And what happens is the battery ends up lasting about as long as a regular battery, but you pay a premium for it. So my leaning is to get a lead acid battery if the car came that way from the factory, and to only get an AGM battery if the car came with an AGM battery from the factory. There is also a way in at least 4runners to hack the system to make the voltage correct for an AGM battery. A typical alternator is going to charge a battery between 13.2 volts and about 14.2 volts. That's not quite enough to optimally charge an AGM battery. And with this 4runner's factory alternator, measuring healthy 931 cold cranking amps, but the charge is only 74%, so having it charge at a higher voltage would be better for this battery in the long run, so we're going to try a modification. AGM batteries need a voltage of between 14.2 and 14.8 to optimally charge an AGM battery, and to have it be as durable as you would want it to be given the money you probably spent on it. There are a number of different ways to accomplish hacking the 4runner to charge at a higher voltage. Bear in mind, you can't have the car exceed 15 volts or it'll end up ruining an AGM battery. One method is the diode hack, where you simply replace a fuse with a diode. That ends up tricking the regulator and the alternator to boost the voltage by about 0.5 to 0.7 volts, which is exactly what you need. I don't recommend just using a diode because that deletes a fuse that your car needs to protect itself should something go wrong. Another way is a product called Voltage Booster Pro, which is about $100, and that has a diode and a fuse in it, and also a switch, so you can switch the boost from low to high on it. And then there's the Fixity Fix way, which is installing a diode, which is about $11, in line with a fuse. We're going to put together in the workshop a diode and fuse inline hack to install. We'll show you that as we build it. And the cheap, and I would argue somewhat dangerous hack, is to replace the 7.5 amp fuse with this GM diode that ends up stepping up the voltage from the regulator for an AGM type battery in certain GM cars. You do have to file these little shoulders off of the diode for it to fit, and the arrow points toward the driver, I believe. If you get it wrong, it'll just kick on the alternator or charge light on the dashboard, and you know to flip it around the other way. You're not going to damage anything this way. The reason it's dangerous is because you're replacing a fuse which is intended to protect the car from shorts or over voltages with a diode. This does not have a built-in fuse, so we're going to build an inline circuit. I don't think it's worth spending $100 on the pre-made product, although it's nice in that it's just plug and play. With this diode, and again the arrow, I'm told, points toward the driver. I think I can get it in there enough. Look at that, now it's charging at 14.5-ish, right in the range we want it. So that diode made a difference. But the circuit is not protected by a fuse. A lot of people just roll this way, but we'll see about protecting the circuit with a fuse. These are two inline fuse connectors, and we're going to connect them in series so that the power comes from the fuse box through a fuse and then through the diode and then back in to the fuse box. I have harvested fuse legs from these mini fuses, 2 of them, and I'm going to use a crimp connector to connect these to the wire and then push these into a fuse tap. A fuse tap allows you to tap power from an existing fuse, which you push these legs into the fuse box where you take a fuse out, connect a fuse here that fuses the original circuit, but then it taps into a power leg to run to a new circuit on a car. I'm going to cut this wire off and then close off the connector here, and then just use this to tap into the car's circuit. This harvested fuse leg will go into one of these, and then it'll go through a fuse and a diode in what we're about to build, and then back in to send the correct power to our battery from the alternator. I just happen to have some 10 gauge wire inline fuses here. I could use a thinner wire, and you probably should, but these are just what I have in the shop. So we're going to over-spec this a little bit. No problems with that. You may disagree, and that's fine, but in my experience and people I trust, we typically will use crimp connectors rather than soldering in a high vibration area like the engine compartment of a car where it goes through tons of heat cycles. I'm going to use these single-ended crimps to attach the harvested fuse leg onto the inline fuse wires. What happens when solder is used in an environment with high vibration and a lot of heat cycling is the solder can become brittle and disconnect, and that's not something we want in something as crucial as an alternator circuit. Strong connection. And we heat shrink it with an adhesive lined heat shrink to hold things together even better. If you don't have a battery operated heat gun yet, it's worth considering. I bought into the Makita line long ago, so this one happens to be the Makita version, which I like a lot. Doesn't get as hot as a plug-in one. Doesn't move quite as fast, but it gets the job done with one less cable. Go ahead and heat shrink the other side, which I created the same way. Then we need to join these two inline fuses together. Shorten them just a little bit. I may even end up redoing this to shorten it and make it fit the fuse compartment a little bit better. You can see how we've crimped around the wire and we've crimped around the insulation, and then we're going to push another wire in to do the same. So this will go into the 4runner where the fuse came out for Alt S, and then one leg of the loom I just built will go into one leg of this fuse, and then the other leg into the other, so you can see from the car it'll make a circuit through the fuse, through the diode, and then back to the car. I have red on the power side and then black on the diode side. The diode pops in the second slot here, and then a 7.5 amp fuse pops in the first one. I will go ahead and cut off the circuit tap because I can't imagine I'm going to need a 5-volt circuit anywhere in the car. I'm going to file this down just so I don't risk shorts. If you don't have some of this liquid electrical tape, it's a good product to have around the shop. Just going to put some over this exposed piece of metal, let it dry. It would be interesting to pull one of these things apart and then recircuit it so that you could fit the diode and the fuse here together. It'd take up less space, maybe be a little more elegant, but at that point I'd probably just go ahead and spend 90 or 100 bucks for the fancy part. And now let's talk installation. First, we pop out the 7.5 amp Alt S fuse. And then here's the loom I built. The loom here is connected to this power tap where I've cut off the output for the new circuit, and we're not using a new circuit because this is only 5 volts coming out of this circuit. It's just a control circuit. The power side of this circuit is the leg nearest to the battery, so that's why the red leg is inserted here. Comes through a fuse connected to another inline fuse holder, and this is where the diode goes, and the diode arrow faces back toward the fuse box in this case, or toward this driver's leg of the 7.5 amp fuse hole. So we just plug this whole thing in here in place of the 7.5 amp fuse, nice and snug. The diode's nice and snug. The 7.5 amp fuse is nice and snug. And if all goes as planned, this circuit here, this diode, is going to kick up the regulator for the alternator to bring us between, it'll probably start up around 14.6 to 14.7 volts to the battery, and then hover between 14.2 and 14.8 during all driving. Let's start it up and make sure we got it right. Battery light went out instantly. That's a good sign. It would have stayed on if we had the polarity reversed or if there was a problem with the circuit. 14.63. We are good. Not really necessary to close these off because it's inside of the fuse container, but a little extra protection never hurt anybody. I'm keeping an extra 7.5 fuse in case something goes wrong with this apparatus in the car. Putting my fuse puller back in its little spot. This cover should fit just fine over all this wiring. One day I might make a more felt wiring loom here. Yeah, it fits fine. And everything in there is insulated, so it's not going to cause any problems. Certainly not going to rattle. I'm going to make a little sticker to put on the fuse box lid and the battery that says this AGM conversion's been done. If I sell this 4runner or ever am in a jam where I need to put in a lead acid battery, I'm gonna have to pull this apparatus out and put a 7.5 amp fuse back in so the voltages will be correct for a standard battery. Oh, look at that. Who's a good battery? After driving around for an hour or so with the new setup, we've gone from 74% charge with the standard setup to 100% charge with the new fuse and diode loom installed. That should bode well for longevity and performance for the battery and the 4runner. And we saved a few bucks doing it ourselves. One issue with this size battery is it's a group 34 size battery, and for the 4runner, what will fit naturally in it is a group 35 and a group 24F. To make the 34 fit, we're going to have to do a little bit of modification. When this is tightened all the way down, this strap across the top has some slack and won't hold the battery in tightly. So I'm simply going to rethread this rod using my tap and die set from OMT down just a little bit farther. So the modification is simple. I'm just going to need to run an M6 1.0 die down this rod about an extra 1/4 inch. So it just starts and runs on like this. Then I'll add some oil and a bit of leverage. This is WD-40. I just buy it in bulk because I use a lot of it. That's an excellent way to save money, buying WD-40 by the gallon. So we've got bare rod here that is turning into a threaded segment of rod. So that'll simply tighten the top here. So this Group 34 battery will be held snugly into the 4runner the way it ought to be.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Here I'm going to go a little bit deeper because I found in this case the bars are both M6, but one of them gets very wide where the threads end. So I'm going to have to use one threaded a little deeper to tighten the battery. You can see the steel that winds off of the bar as it threads. These tap and die sets are really handy for refurbishing fasteners, but also for threading a rod into a bolt like I've just done here. Today's tool is the Orion MotorTech tap and die set. Any good home shop should be equipped with a tap and die set. This will let you restore threads on nuts and bolts, or even parts of your engine or car that are threaded for a bolt to go into. And also, if you damage threads or cross thread something, this is the way to repair them. You can also get SAE or inch sizes from the same company if you have an older American car or a car with SAE or fractional inch fasteners. We make every effort here to put links in the description for tools or parts that we're using to make it easy for you to find it. If it's an Amazon link, if you click our link to get there and buy it, it won't cost you anything extra, but the channel gets a little tiny bit of a commission and it helps out Fixity Fix. Putting this back together, another option, but it involves extra parts, which I don't like to use superfluous parts. I could have just stacked washers here to make this hold in more tightly. I think threading this bolt down farther is a more elegant solution.
Nice.
All right, that's a good fit. So now we can make this fancy Interstate 34R group battery fit in the 4runner just fine. As promised, here's the story of how this car fooled me. I posted a video for a couple of days of the battery change process installing this AGM into the 4runner. And a viewer named Mike Rogers posted a question. So your 4runner came from the factory with an AGM? That got me thinking that I never tested whether this 4runner was charging at AGM voltages. I just assumed, since it had a Toyota AGM battery in it, that it was. I bought this car with just 18,000 miles on it, and all services had been conducted by Toyota dealers. And it came with an AGM Toyota battery. Or maybe it was replaced under warranty and that was all the dealer had in stock. So when I did test the system, of course, this 4runner was charging at lead acid levels, not AGM levels. Hence, redoing the video, learning something along the way, and then of course figuring out how to build a fused diode wire loom to get this car to charge the AGM at greater than 14 volts and less than 15 volts. Thanks again to Mike Rogers for the illuminating comment. And folks, please leave comments. I learn from each and every one of them. I think the 4runner community is better because of comments and better because of forums like these. Thank you for watching. If you found this content helpful, please give this video a like and consider subscribing. If you didn't like the content, then it's time to seriously reconsider your life and your life choices. Thank you for watching, and please tune in next time.